Hello, welcome back to the readings of to MILELE. We are on chapter 36, which means we're almost at the end. And if you're still here with me, that means you're invested, and I'm so glad you're still here. Let's recap 34 and 35. So in 34, we see that the mist is completely gone from the world, except for around the waters of Eden too, but it has changed in appearance. It's not gray anymore. It's white, like white rolling clouds. But except for the mist patch, that has remained unchanged and is still a dark gray voluminous heap. We also experienced a special journey that Hope took, sort of like the one when she went with Prince Adani to the mist patch and went through to Jennies. This one was sort of special, but she was more aware of what was happening. She ends up on the high point, led by Gabriel, to meet with Prince Adani, and which of course she was excited about. And we get a glimpse of the relationship between Prince Adani, sovereign emperor Agape, and Agios, the sovereign ambassador, and their connection to each other, and also humans and loyals, in particular the bride's connection to them and to the world. It was a lovely, sweet, poignant, meaningful scene. Back in the hub, Agios reminds Hope that baby Moses is indeed protected, even though he's in the clutches of the Council of Nations. He would be safe. Now, in 35, there was a discussion between the sovereign emperor Agape and sovereign prince Adani that about Dragon and how he has deceived the world, but the bride, the loyals, would overcome. They also referred to the sovereign emperor, referred to him as the lawless one, and that those who were swayed by the Weltschieß and followed the lawless one would not be able to enter Jennies, even though it's the emperor's greatest desire for all humanity to be able to enter there. Some just could not exist there. So let's keep reading to see what happens next as Nathan and Faith enter the Atlantic Ocean. All right, that's where we are on the Atlantic Ocean. I know that not everyone can enter Prince Adani's sky kingdom, Faith said to Nathan, even if they wanted to. Nathan thought for a moment. The warmth of the noonday sun bathed his face, competing with a cool breeze that rustled along the outer passageway of the merchant ship. Their unencumbered days were numbered, and they were trying to make the most of it, ignoring the nagging sense that this uneventful journey was surely the calm before the storm. Not in the state they're in, Nathan said. That's what I mean. He tapped the tip of her nose affectionately. Which is, what exactly do you mean? Her laughter was light. She wiggled her nose. Well, those who refuse to accept Prince Adani as sovereign prince and those who will pledge loyalty to the New World Order cannot enter. Nathan nodded. She should know, with her cousin Judah being an elite underground Israeli loyal. He said, but I wonder how many know the reason why. She looked puzzled. You mean how to explain that to someone? Let's put it this way, he said. How are some able to live on Eden too, but not others? Without Eden 2 DNA, they can't survive in its unique atmosphere. In the same way, Nathan said, only those with the sovereign's essence can survive in Prince Adani's kingdom and in the presence of the sovereign emperor. Nathan looked across the ocean. Its vastness hadn't ceased to amaze him. It reminded him of the greatness of the gulf between humans and the sovereigns, a separation that had not been there at the beginning of time. Then, the first people had been in complete union with the sovereigns until they were deceived by the head of the Weltschkies. In other words, the world spirit. Sovereign Prince had bridged that vast gulf, but he'd been unspeakably tortured by the Weltschkies, resulting in him bearing the full force of the toxin. How to understand the weight of all wrongs of all time thrust upon him? The thought very much sobered Nathan. He wanted to ask Prince Adani, was it worth it? Now remember I told you that Weltschkies is a German term for world spirit. So here it's now in the story, the translation. A gentle tap on his arm broke his thoughts. What is it? Faith asked, looking at him searchingly. She'd been looking at him that way the last few days, as if sensing his every mood. Just thinking about life after all this, he said. She smiled. After all this, yes, life with the prince in the sky kingdom, we can only imagine. Can our greatest imagination even compare? Nathan asked. I suppose not, and you and I won't be like this. Like what? She looked away, then back at him, and said in a small voice, in love. Holding her gaze for a moment, words failed him. His hands came together on the ship's rail. He rested his chin on them for a moment, then he straightened. No, he said, we will not be. But we both know that the greatest love is not being in love. Being in love comes and goes. It ebbs and flows and sometimes disappears altogether. But love, in its purest form, endures. It's more about commitment than about feelings, and choosing to put others first, not holding things against them. That love we have here in some measure, and will have more fully there. It's the very nature of the sovereigns. Her next words rocked him. So why don't we just complete the in love part right here then? What? Well, we have a captain to officiate and the crew as guests. Let's get married. Faith? Her mouth was firmly set. Nathan faltered, then held his ground. You do realize it wouldn't be legal? What do you mean? Marriage by a captain at sea. Well, as long as the sovereigns recognize it, it's fine, she said. He was baffled. How had this happened? The woman he'd stopped chasing was now chasing him. Ever since the night he had learned of Keiko Bay's supposed resurrection, he'd closed the door to any thought of a relationship. So now, naturally, everything in him resisted her idea. But with her big eyes pleading, he looked away, then had to brace himself as she suddenly flung her arms around his neck, looking up at him. Since they don't allow marriages on Eden 2, let's do it now, and I'll stay with you there on Eden 2. Nathan's mind went blank. His heart squeezed. Then he heard the soft whisper, take her as your wife. Agios. Well, that's a turn of events. Let's keep going. Eden 2, 7 days later. Hope looked up from the truth tome on the picnic table. She just finished her lunch and was enjoying an unusually peaceful rest day with Ruth and Anna. Even with the impending arrival of the new world chancellor, there was an odd peace. So much had changed since the unexpected military invasion. The most incredible change was in the mist that still surrounded the island, even though the rest of the world was now free of it. A mountainous border of snowy white mist now cordoned off Eden 2's waters. And just as incredible, the silver fighter planes could be seen hovering throughout its voluminous walls. It had only taken a couple of attempts from the Council of Nations forces for the lesson to be learned that those in the silver planes could distinguish cargo crew and the messenger attorney from hostile forces. Even though her separation from baby Moses was a constant ache, Hope had embraced Agios's peace, believing her baby was indeed protected. What's the point of Governor Peter allowing marriages now that that maniac is ruling the world? Ruth asked, grimacing. Would that he had stayed dead. It's been almost 6 years without it, Anna said, smiling. Everyone knows there have been some, how shall I put it, interests formed. Interest? Ruth asked, laughing mockingly. Why pretend otherwise, Ruth? Anna asked with pseudo-innocence. Hope groaned inwardly. Anna was asking for trouble. Ruth had been on the outs with Boa over his repeated absence from their group gatherings. He'd become increasingly busy since Eden 2 had to start processing its own foods for use on the island. The Council of Nations embargo had seen to that. Even though Eden 2 dutifully sent out its fruit, vegetable, and grain produce, manufactured and processed goods on return ships had been withheld from Eden 2. Anna, don't tease, Hope gently scolded her, especially that we know you have your own interests. Hope noticed Anna's skin darken to a rosy hue. And Ruth, you know why Boa had to switch his rest day. He has the expertise that's needed for us to survive. Processing produce was never part of our mission here. I know, Ruth conceded. She turned a woeful gaze towards Hope. I'm sorry. I know I've been out of sorts lately. It's not just Boa. It's baby Moses. It's the world envoy. Pardon me, world chancellor, reborn. Her last words dribbled with sarcasm. Suddenly, she slapped the top of the table. Hope, how can you be so calm? I'm used to being the one soothing you. She has to be. It was Captain Nick coming towards them. His official uniform told them it wasn't his rest day. She still has bigger things to face. It wouldn't do for her to fall apart now. The peace wavered. Hope slowly stood to her feet. She'd picked up the truth tome and was clasping it to her chest. Captain Nick? Ms. Kniza, forgive me for interrupting, but you had requested immediate notification of the arrival of Keiko Bays. Ma'am, we've just received news that his plane has docked on the aircraft carrier. The piece crashed. It's expected that he will soon request your audience, Ms. Kniza. Then, inexplicably, the piece was resurrected, bolstered by staunch determination. Do or die, the spirit of the martyr. She would resist him until the end, even if it meant her death. New scene. The request for an audience came sooner than Hope expected. It was late afternoon, with the sun still high above, but she had anticipated the meeting would have been held the next day. After being intensively briefed by Governor Peter and Colonel Davenport, Hope was now hemmed between Lieutenant Gideon and Captain Nick in a military vehicle. Colonel Davenport was in the vehicle right ahead of them. Dust rose as the vehicles traveled the partially graveled road towards the helipad and the runway. Hope glanced behind. Even more dust accompanied the line of vehicles following them. Security in numbers. Just as they hit the concrete helipad, Hope spied Boa to her right, with Cree and Lucas. The boys were waving madly. Lucas broke away from the group at a run, following the directions of the vehicles. "Make sure you come back, Miss Hope. Make sure you come back," Lucas yelled, still waving as he ran. Hope returned the wave. She felt like crying, seeing the still underweight teenager running so vigorously. She continued waving, looking back until he slowed and then stopped. Facing forward again, she pressed the back of one hand over her eyes, willing away the tears. This was not the time to cry. As they continued driving the length of the runway, Hope could see Eden 2 soldiers already lining the landscape along the ship's port. However, it wasn't until she glimpsed Agent Mike that she felt real assurance. He stood tall and sure, unafraid. She couldn't see the owners of the silver planes, even though she knew they were in the white mist. But Agent Mike she could see. He would accompany her, along with Lieutenant Gideon and Captain Nick. The entourage stopped along the ship's port. Nervous tremors worried her stomach. The World Chancellor was one reason, but the other was foremost. She longed to see baby Moses. Agent Mike greeted her in silence with a nod. His dark eyes were fierce, and his face set like flint. In that, Hope found strength. "Always a man of few words," Lieutenant Gideon joked, trying to lighten the mood. "But most definitely a man we want on this mission," Captain Nick added. It had been almost 6 years since Hope had left a world of the mist to the clear skies of Eden 2. Now, as they boarded a small patrol boat, she realized that she would finally see the skies beyond Eden 2 once more. Yes, because outside of, once they go through the cloud barrier, this will be the first time she's seen the world without the mist in almost 6 years. So that takes us to the end of 36. Join me next time for 37. Look forward to it. Take care.